Now let's talk about a topic that will make you very nervous the first time you do this to a database. And it'll also make you nervous the 3000th time you do this to a database, and that is deleting a table from that database. Now, in database speak, you don't delete a table, you drop a table. And so that's the term that we're going to use. We'll drop a table. And we're going to use the drop table command. Now, in this video, I'm going to show it to you in T-SQL code. Then in a separate video, we'll do it graphically. Either way, it's somewhat disturbing when you do this. It's kind of like formatting a drive. You know how you always check about 15 times to make sure you've pointed at the correct drive and all that? Well, the following occurs whenever you drop a table. All the data is removed from the table. All indexes, triggers, and constraints that are on that table are removed. All permission specifications for the table are removed. In other words, everything goes away. Now notice, views and stored procedures that reference that table are not dropped. And so if you want to drop those, you'll have to go out there and find them and drop them. Now, that brings up an interesting question, does it not? How do I know which views and stored procedures reference the table? And I might want to check that out before I drop the table, because there could be some functionalities out there that are going to depend on this table, and maybe I need to wait a few quarters, or we need to think about migrating some data. There might be just a little bit more involved in this. Well, here's the way you do it. You can execute the sys.dm SQL referencing entities dynamic management function. Now, dynamic management functions are part of SQL Server. They're built in, they're pre-coded for you, and you can just use them. When you execute this, it's going to return one row for each entity, a view or a stored procedure that's in the current database that references any other user-defined entity by name. That's a long way of saying, if I execute that command and give it the name of the table that I'm going to drop, it will go through the database and tell me everybody who's referencing that. Now, if you go out into your working files folder, you'll see sample code for dropping a table, and you'll see documentation for both the drop table command right out of SQL Books Online, and you'll also see documentation for this sys.dm SQL referencing entities. But let me jump out into the Management Studio and show you some examples of all this stuff. So what I'm going to do is, let's open up the SQL Server Management Studio. And notice I have a couple of tabs here for you. I've preloaded one. But the first thing is, I just want to remind you, I'm going to scroll down. This is the command that we use to create the table mark, right? Right here it is. Well, we're going to drop that table now. And I want you to see something here that will kind of make you a little nervous maybe. I'm going to type drop table mark. Okay? And I'm going to highlight that command and I'm going to click execute. Now notice what happened. The command completed successfully. Well, boy, that's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because it didn't ask me, nothing popped up. Hey, you're about to delete a table. Are you sure? Are you really positive? Is this what you actually want to do? You might lose some data. No, it just did it. Okay. Now, if that wasn't in a transaction, if I didn't have a good backup, my data is gone. A lot of things are not pretty now. So what I want to do is hide the results on this, and I'm going to go back and create this table, and I'll execute it. And so now my table's back. Okay, so let's go talk about how I could know what all is connected to this table. Well, I'm going to go execute. Now, I have this out here in code, and here is, let me unpin this and make it go out of the way. Here is this select referencing schema name, referencing entity, and notice, if I scroll all the way over, here's all that code, and you've got this out there in your working files folder. Notice it's called referencing entities example. And notice the from is that object out there, the sys.dm SQL referencing entities. All right. So notice I'm passing it the name mark and object, and you can go read all this and see what all that means. But if I execute this, notice it returns nothing. Okay. Well, what I'm going to do is execute this little code. This is all just like this out there in your file in the working files folder. You can play with this. I'm going to create a view on that marked table. Notice that is completed successfully. And now I'm going to go execute this management function one more time now that I've created a view. And notice it shows me you've got something named M out here. Notice that's the name of the view I created. And it's out there on that. Okay. So that's all I'll talk about now, but you can see how you can use that to figure out, hey, wait a minute now, if I drop this table, I'm going to have a view and some stored procedures or whatever hanging out there that are not going to work anymore. So dropping a table, pretty interesting. Also, to make it even a little more scary, I can put a comma here and put the name of another table I want to drop and drop more than one table at a time. Extra scary, okay? Scary squared. So that's how to drop a table using TransX SQL. And again, there is a drop table documentation sheet out there for you in your working files folder. Look over that, more homework for you. But there's a lot going on here, and you want to make sure you know your stuff before you start dropping tables.